Today, we're celebrating our 100th episode on Coffee Time with Mastermind. Some of our loyal viewers and guests have come back to join us today to talk about what their Coffee Time with Masterminds experience has meant to them, how it's changed some of the things that they've done in the field, and just joined us to give us some advice going forward.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. My name is Peter Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds, a 30-minute conversation with leaders of mission-based organizations. If you're just joining us from either the US or our syndicated listeners in Australia, pop your name in the chat and let us know where you're from. I'm joined today by my two amazing co-hosts, Peter Blakely of Blakely Consulting and Cynthia Rojas of To Your Growth. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's Friday.
It is.
We made it.
And
We made it to 100.
We're 100. Yay! And guess who's with us?
Do you want to bring on Myra?
Yay! Myra, how are you?
I am good. I am well. And I am so happy and proud to be here on the 100th episode. This is wonderful.
Oh my God. 100. We would have been happy with
Love
6 episodes.
That was the original plan.
Yep.
I love it. I love it.
It was. Woo. Well, thank you for joining us. You are definitely one of our loyal listeners or viewers. We have a few of them, and you were able to come on the show today, so we thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Well, today's a party, so it's less about an interview and more about a party. So, how is everybody?
I'm
Good.
It's Friday.
The time is can get a little bit frantic, but
Yes.
yeah, and I think we're all a little in shock that this is our 100th episode.
I think so.
We started this thinking we started this at the beginning of COVID, thinking we were going to do it while we were in lockdown, and that was that. And then maybe 6 weeks later we would be done, and now it's going on forever, and I think it's really I think it's taken on some importance that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah, and so we should talk about that. But it's interesting because you said it's going on forever. Rebecca asked us this week, what do we see in the future of Coffee Time? And you said we're going on forever. Except that I wonder what the technology will be 10 years from now. Oh,
yeah.
What might be 3 years from now, right? Like, let's see what that looks like, and hopefully we still look young. Yeah,
We will.
Wow, we all should have worn red today. We didn't get the memo on the left side of the screen.
Yes, Rebecca didn't get the red blouse memo, but that's okay, Rebecca. You balance us out really well.
We didn't call her.
Really well. All right.
Myra, it's just so wonderful communicating with you in the chat every week. You share funny things, you share information, education. It's just been so great and a delight that you've joined us today and given up some of your time to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I wouldn't have missed it. Cindy said something. She asked a question like, where do you see you guys in 10 years and stuff like that? And I kind of see you guys syndicated. Like, Cindy doesn't know this, but every so often I'll write to Oprah and say, you have to watch this, because I know Cindy loves Oprah. But so every so often I say, like, are you not reading my emails, Oprah? You have to come watch this.
Yeah. In 10 years, we'll have to go to the studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
That would be awesome.
I was thinking about Oprah the other day, and here's what I was thinking. So people know I love Oprah. I was such a loyal viewer.
We were.
And I remember watching her and wanting to emulate her and be like her, like her interview style. And I would fantasize and daydream about having a talk show and asking questions and engaging people the way Oprah did. And now I have a talk show and I'm not like her. And it's really interesting, right?
Yep.
Like to be able to be yourself. I mean, she definitely served as a role model, but when I had the opportunity to do it, I think I'm the opposite of her. Like I'm just like, whoa, yay, let's do this. Where she's a little calmer and thoughtful and really like just different.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
was for
bear in
sure.
mind that in 10 years, if you are syndicated, that you will be a little bit more um, streamlined, right? Because you're going to have producers right next to you telling you when to
Yeah.
shut up and when to speak and when not to. So, so
Yes,
so
yes.
you might end up being like Oprah.
No, yeah. And like when Rebecca was serving as the producer a couple of months ago, it was like that, right? So it gave Peter and I the opportunity to relax and be very focused and very present in our interviews. But Rebecca was in the back sending us comments and saying like, Myra made a comment, don't forget to respond. Don't forget to say hello. And it was like all this pressure. So yes, you're right.
You can always tell too, because it's when you're looking at the screen, but you're reading and you're like, oh, okay, thinking visually. I got to bring up that comment, it is a lot of work, but think of how much we've learned from not only the technology piece, but from our guests.
Yeah.
Myra, what is something that you took away, I guess, the most from the show that you could talk about with some of our viewers?
I think one of the most important things that I have taken from your show is to really continue to do things afraid, right? A lot of people stop themselves from doing stuff, and there's a lot of topics that you guys have spoken about that has allowed me to share with the people that I support and the schools that I support and the principals. And even though sometimes it has nothing to do with education, I always make it about education because you're always learning something, and that's really the important stuff, the learning piece, right? We learn every single day, and I can teach that. If I learn something, I can teach it because I was a teacher first before being an administrator. So I take that away, that just learn, absorb. Not everyone's coachable, but you can learn something, right? And if you learn it, share it. I always say that, share it.
I love that advice.
One of the things I've enjoyed, and this was not planned, is how you've been able to apply what we talk about and what gets discussed within your sector. So technically, schools are nonprofits, I think, right, Peter? Schools are nonprofits?
Yes.
Thank you. And Peter's saying yes in the green room. And but when we designed the show, we designed it for community-based, mission-driven organizations. A little different from schools that operate more like an institution. However, your application of what we talk about has been extraordinary because you also helped us see that leadership runs across all sectors. And what we learn here, we can take elsewhere. I read somewhere that we've been studying leadership as long as we've been studying humanity or human beings. We've been studying leadership. So
I think we'll have to ask our data expert for some of that research.
Yeah, that's interesting. I will look that up. Well, that brings up the second question, like how long have we actually been studying human beings?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But as long as we've been studying human behavior, we've been studying leadership.
Well, I guess that's why you say the leader of the pack. Lion pride always has a king, right? Interesting.
Well, leadership is also organic, right? So I mean, we see it in animals. right? It's just an organic thing. We see people rise to their leadership within different situations. So it's an interesting topic. It's a really interesting topic.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
I
so
think
is
the way
data.
we started with this really specific case study, about what was going on during COVID and how leaders were responding and how organizations were adapting. And then the more we talked about it, the more we realized that this is really universal. This is not just a COVID era thing. What we're talking about is generally how do leaders and organizations adapt to change, right? Adapt in uncertain times and adapt in times of crisis. Which is why I say we're going to do this forever. It turns out like there is so much to talk about in this topic. It's not going away.
Yeah.
That is
yeah.
very true.
And the half hour really just whets the appetite.
Yeah.
I think almost every show we talk about how we could go on and talk about the topic for a really long time.
I mean, that's the other thing we've discovered is how how every single element of an organization and of a person is affected by right the change, transition, leadership style, changes in organizational values and priorities. And so every topic that we've brought up, we've realized there are a million angles to look at it.
Yeah.
I have a question that I think might be fun for Myra to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will also give us insight into how we articulate our show, episode 101 and beyond, for the next 10 years. Myra, how are you describing our show out to friends, colleagues, people in the community, if you talk about our show at all?
Well, I do. Sometimes I get the information. So, like, for instance, the data piece, when you guys talk a lot about data, I'm not a data person, right? I'm more of a let me see what's happening and I go in and help you and tackle you. Okay, show me this, right? But I've had to learn to really decipher and really pick the data that I'm actually trying to analyze. And Cindy's probably saying, "Oh my God, Myra's using data and analyzing the same sentence," because she knows that I'm just not like that. But it also has allowed me to show people proof, right? So I say, if you implement this, look at how your data is going down. Look at how your suspension rates are going down, right? So I always tell them, well, I learned this from my friend. She's a host. She has a live Facebook host show, and I have to be very careful sometimes because I'm not supposed to be on Facebook during work time. But I'm like, it's work. I'm using it for work. I'm using the data that you guys are giving me to help principals, support them. So that's how I get away with it. So I do tell people that I watch a wonderful show from 10:30 to 11 every Friday. It's actually in my calendar so I don't forget, because I will forget sometimes. And sometimes I'll text Cindy. I'm like, damn it, I'm not in the office and I didn't put it on my phone calendar. So, but when I'm in the office, I'm always on it because I have it on my calendar.
That's great.
That's awesome.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know. I think about the different angles that the show is presented from, right? We have fund development and grants, we have data and evaluation, and leadership and change. Change is huge, right? I mean, Cynthia, you've given us so much great advice and information around there. And so there isn't just a one topic of we're in a crisis and let's talk about the crisis, but rather how can we use different angles of the nonprofit infrastructure to help navigate those crises, avoid them in the future, and plan going forward. And I think has been very invaluable to us as hosts of the show. But I hear that from some of our listeners. So thank you, Myra, for sharing your experience. And it's great to hear how people talk about our show.
Thank you for giving us this, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that watches this show. I mean, I'm sure you guys have friends and family members that watch it, and I have friends and family members that I say, you better log on. But so I know that whatever they're doing, whatever their occupation is, I'm sure that there's a takeaway that they can take away from it, because like I said, you guys provide different information that you can really apply it to, like, sometimes you can apply it to just real life stuff, and
Yeah.
sometimes you guys have had different people come on and to talk about trauma, right? To talk
Yeah.
about crisis, right? That's all I do every single day, right?
Mhm.
So I was able to use their perspective and really, even if I'm doing a PowerPoint to share with my people, the principles that I support, I'm taking something away, something new, something from clinicians. Because, the first thing I tell people is when I go to schools is I'm not a clinician. This is all me that I've learned, all the research that I've done to help you. But I'm not a clinician. I can't do therapy with a student,
Mhm.
so, and they understand that, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So you've given that to me, and I'm sure you've given that to many others.
I think one of the things that was really helpful to me when we started doing the show, and I anticipate it was helpful to other people, was when we were in the middle of COVID and just kind of reacting. There was so much uncertainty. Nobody knew what was coming next. And we started to do this show. I think it helped a lot of people to get a little bit broader perspective, right? To step out of the reaction for a minute and understand, like, we're all going through this, and some of these things just aren't solvable right now, and it's not just your organization, it's everybody. And we started to, like, get into some of the underlying reasons and causes for some of these things, and that was very helpful to me.
It definitely was an outlet for a lot of, I'm sure, an outlet for a lot of viewers to just, even if they just wanted to come on and just, even if the 30 minutes was their break time, right?
Right.
That was also helpful during the COVID.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I said this last week, because last week we celebrated 99 in anticipation for 100, but that was big for me as well, right? During the pandemic, it was really challenging. The isolation, my marketing strategy was talking to people face to face. And all of that went away. And when we had the mandated shelter in place where we couldn't go anywhere, where everything was shut down, it felt like the world ended. And yet, the fact that I had this show to look forward to every week, and there was a lot of planning. We were early in our producing experience, and we did an enormous amount of planning for the earlier shows. And it really, really was. I don't want to say it saved my life, but it's in that category, right? Like, it really helped me through a really difficult time. So I love the show, and I love that jingle.
I know, it's so fun. It's so fun to show up here every week, and then afterwards, we always say, "Oh, that was such a great show," and just feeling elated to go into the weekend every single Friday. And even if I can't be on, because sometimes we aren't on the show, I always listen. I always tune in. I always want to be there and participate. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's life changing.
Can you imagine how isolated we would have been, or how much more isolated we would have been and felt if we hadn't started this show right then, right?
Yeah. That would have been crazy. And we have found in the writing of our book that there are some, like, really great insights. And the fact that this is documented is extraordinary, right? Because what we may not realize, or maybe we do, is that we are living in a part of history that will be in books forever. Right. And we are those people, much like when right now we read about the Civil War, right?
Yes.
Those people were real. They may not have known how much of our history they would have been, they were going to be, but they were real people. And so we are going to be part of that history. And this show will be in books because because we've documented everything, every conversation, meaning every show, our guests, all that good stuff. So we're making.
You should add a page of. You should ask your loyal viewers, right, or your viewers in general, to give you a quote. You should add a page of quotes to your book, of quotes that they would say about what the show meant to them.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we do have from the guest. I do have some quotes that I want to read because I think they're interesting. Um, so this is a quote from Dexter Singleton. He came when he was episode 18 and we're in
Mhm.
100. So he was way early. And what was interesting about Dexter is that he is a performing artist. And we know that the arts practically disappeared from our lives. And what a way to understand how important the arts are to our existence. And so a couple of months after the onset, the beginning of the pandemic, he became an ED to a theater and really had to think about how do you create theater without having people in person. He was very thoughtful and going through really, really deep reflection. And he said, I want to continue and encourage myself, as well as all leaders, to continue to deconstruct what we believe is the standard American dream and to look at redefining what that is and putting family first. What a wonderful quote, because one of the things that the pandemic did is
Yeah.
help us see there's another way of doing things. He
Mhm.
had to do it for the arts. He had to manage being at home with two kids. He was homeschooling. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And his wife was an essential worker, so she was out of the home and he was in the home.
And I think we had this fallacy that workers are separate from people, right? What we call like the ideal worker archetype, who goes to work in the morning and doesn't even think of any other responsibilities until 5 o'clock, and then gets
Yeah.
on the train and goes home and engages with their family. And everybody has been frantically pretending to be that person for
Right.
for 100 years. And it came apart in a really great way. I mean, one of the great things that happened during COVID was it was obvious that that's not how people work. That's not how people's lives are. And when we all started working in each other's living rooms and seeing each other's families and other responsibilities, it's this great moment in history to say, like, let's stop pretending and let's all acknowledge the fact that workers are people too and have other priorities and responsibilities. I think it's a great thing.
I think when we started talking about that, that's when we led into the structural care and the importance of
Yep.
of taking care of yourself and taking care of your employees and your teammates. That was a really long topic for us, but I thought we got some of the highest engagement during those segments, which
Yeah.
tells me that that was really important for people. And that's something, we talk about what's next for coffee time. Myra, do you think that we should continue with those segments of structural care?
With self-care or structural care, that's right, not self-care.
You can't say self-care.
Yes, I know Peter doesn't like the word self-care. I remember.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The Department of Education also has had a they have enlarged a very huge group and have given, at least for me, one of the crisis managers, there's only 8 of us in the city, right? An enormous amount of responsibility to do the wellness and to do the mindfulness and stuff like that. And I think even though when I go into schools and do it, I think that I get a better response when I'm doing it in person than when I'm doing it virtually. So I think it's an important topic. I'm not going to say it's not important to take time for me walking and, going into my sauna, but that's not something that everyone has, right? Or that everyone can do. So, but I do think it's important to talk about it. Maybe at a different level, maybe something else about self-care or structural care. So but I don't think it would be a waste. I think it's still much. I think it's very needed. I'm not against it. I just think that people need to be ready for it. Maybe I should say it that way. I'm
Yeah.
not against self care. I just think people need to be
And I'm
ready,
not
and
against
people need
self-care
to
either. I
really
don't want
accept
anybody
it.
to come away thinking that that I don't think you
I
should
heard you,
meditate,
Myra.
or if it works for you, you should do it. What I'm saying is it's not
Right.
entirely on you, right? I think that there,
Right.
you know, I think I'm starting to think like, what's the future now, right? And there is some intersection coming up really soon of the great resignation and the structural care conversations, which is what is work going to be like going forward, right? And I think we're going to see more structural care built into workplaces because we realize that people just can't take it anymore, and they're not going to take it anymore, right? I think that work itself and how work fits into our lives is being actively questioned in really constructive ways. And there is a conversation to be had about how that is going to affect a whole lot of things, right? It's going to affect where people live and how people design their lifestyles. It's going to affect the economy. It's going to affect how jobs are laid out. You know, I got an email last week from a software company that I use that said, there's not going to be any customer support for a week. We're taking a week of rest for the 4th of July. Like, this is now a standard practice to just let customers know, like, we need to rest. And I think like this is where we're going. Like, there is going to be a tremendous reimagining of the relationship between employers and workers. And I'm tremendously optimistic about it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I went on.
Before we wrap
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna mute Myra for a minute because she's got some background noise there. So if you wanna join in, Myra, just unmute yourself if you don't mind. Just a technical little tech there. Sorry, Sin. Go ahead.
No problem. I wanted, before we end the show on what the future holds for us, one of our guests who was really impactful was Thaddeus. And so Thaddeus, I think, has been on twice, maybe once. I don't remember, Peter. Twice? Once?
Yep.
Okay, once. But
he's an active viewer. Yeah.
Yes. So that's why I felt maybe more than once. But he talked about joy. And I'm gonna read one of his quotes. And can you imagine, in the midst of all of this, that someone was holding on to joy and teaching or reminding us of joy? And I just want to read one thing something that he told us that I've never forgotten, and I think speaks to this show, why the show started, why why we're gonna keep going, and why what we think is really the core component of the show. You could tell I'm ad-libbing because I'm like, what am I saying? Okay, so he says, oh, I lost my place. Hold on. Oh, he says, this is gonna make a blunder video. I really started to think about joy, allowing us to tap deeper into our drive and to tap deeper into our grit, which helps build our resilience to be able to move forward and accomplish some of these goals, and be able to modify some of those times that we have and some of those things that sometimes seem overwhelming, but that we can actually achieve. And if there is anything that defined the pandemic, it was that, the sense of, could we achieve it? And according to Thaddeus, it was joy that got us through a lot of this. So thank you for that, Thaddeus. He could not make it on the show today, but really has
I think
That's
he's
the
teaching some
difference.
workshops on joy today.
Yes, look at that. He's teaching joy. So
I also want to give a shout out to Renee. She was going to join us as well, but wasn't able to make it today too. I mean, just the thought of all of you wanting to come back and be with us, it's just been really, really special and meaningful to us. Thank you.
yeah, and I wanted to see where Renee was, because when we met Renee, like she had to refocus her organization. She really innovated early on into the pandemic and wanted to really help people that needed help, and was not only focused on delivering her services in the way she thought needed to be done in any methodical and structured way, but redefined her services based on people's needs. And I was dying to ask her how are things going, but we would definitely bring her back.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. So what's our future? We're a little over time. Peter says forever.
I think we're doing this forever. I think I think the topic of leadership in uncertain times, like that, is never going to go away. And I also think that this is the less optimistic way of looking at it. We've also been talking about leadership in the context of landscape level crisis, and that's never going away.
Right.
At least not in the tenure of our careers.
Well, I will continue to watch. I will continue to watch all of you as long as you stay on. And you become rich. And see, Cindy and I have a deal. If I'm rich, she's rich. If she's rich, I'm rich.
You'll be famous.
That better not change.
And for me, the future is more syndications. I want to be all over the world. So if you know how to make that happen, please send me an email. Rebecca, what's the future for Coffee Time?
Just showing up every week, inviting new guests, learning and hearing from our guests and sharing out what our experiences are and all of this adaptation. I mean, we're not going to stop unless the internet goes away, I mean, we're here.
And then we'll be on television. It'll be fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless we transition to a more famous platform than our streaming.
As long as it's not TikTok. I'm not doing TikTok.
No.
I think we should close out. I'm just going to get ready with our jingle just to show everyone, because it's such a great tune, and just close out with some excitement. Thank you so much, Myra, for joining us today. 100 episodes. We're jumping into 101. So
happy birthday. Coffee time.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds.
My name is Peter Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.